TonisWhite. This is my project for CSCI595, Research and Literature. Let's see if I can do this right. Alright. Quantum machine learning, opportunities, challenges, and limitations. Okay. So I didn't follow the typical paradigm, I guess. Unfortunately, I think I messed up halfway through, and professor helped me out by not making me rewrite my entire paper, so I appreciate that. So baseline up front, this is a survey paper focused on understanding the real world potential of quantum machine learning. Right? Specifically, we're looking at where the field shows promise and where it currently is at, and then what is currently holding it back, if that makes sense. All right. Professor wanted my personal cell information, personal email information. Here it is. Just for, so it's recorded on here as well. Oh, and that's also in my final paper as well, on my cover sheet. All right. A few things to talk about. So, in my line of work, quantum has been a big field of study. So, when I was presented the opportunity to research more on this topic, I jumped at it. Plus, with the angle on the artificial intelligence machine learning aspect of it, there was a leveraging aspect that I couldn't ignore. So I've learned a lot from just researching this topic over the semester that I've been able to apply to my job. Just for instance, my background is right after I graduated in 2015 from Texas A&M Commerce, I worked at NASA for 7 years as a software engineer in Mission Control Center. And then I left NASA in 2022, and I've been with Skunkworks in Fort Worth since then, doing other things. So, yeah, I've had a very fruitful career, thanks to Texas A&M Commerce, now East Texas A&M University. So, all right, getting back into it. So, I want to start with the motivation aspect and why I'm researching this. Then I'll briefly cover related work, my methodology. I kind of already talked about the methodology portion, but we'll get into the meat and potatoes of that in a second. Then the core of the talk is the 5 domains, right? So the foundations of quantum machine learning, the hardware realities of the NISQ era, the algorithms and optimization, empirical validation, and just general security. I've got another slide for improvements, like where we where we see it going. I've got some things in there as well, and then the summary and conclusion. Okay. All right. So modern AI models. This guy. Modern AI models are getting very, very large. And we're talking billions, 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 and trillions of parameters, right? So these models are getting huge, complex. The algorithms to train them, to hone them down, are getting larger and larger, more complex as well. So with that comes compute intensity. With compute intensity comes energy resources. With energy resources comes the cost of all this stuff. And that's all compounded on manufacturing, availability, and then resources beyond that. There's raw material at the forefront of all this stuff as well. So there's a huge logistics chain just behind the computing world that not everyone thinks about, right? So when there was like a chip shortage in 2018, 2019, that the Department of Defense was kind of, I don't know, backed up on. And people were like, just buy more chips. Well, you can't, because there weren't chips. They have to like start from square zero and then make them. All right. So naturally, getting back into it, researchers are asking, is there a better paradigm to use, right? So this goes into the whole quantum computing thing. So quantum computing is one of the most promising candidates to fill that gap. You know, it's not just one choice and one choice only, right? It's a candidate. It's like it's a bidder and a proposer system, right? So we have to jockey into position to fill a gap for a need. So the main question here is, where does quantum machine learning actually help? And what's preventing real quantum advantage today? So, quantum machine learning combines machine learning, obviously, with quantum computation, obviously. So, quantum computation, not necessarily the hardware aspect of it, but also the software aspect of it. So we use quantum concepts like superposition, entanglement, target tasks such as classification, optimization, pattern recognition. That's the machine learning aspect of it. And QML is promising, but we're limited by, noise, scale, and then the hardware reliability. Can we cool this thing down? Can we get it small enough to actually fit it into what we needed to get it into? Is it energy efficient? Can we pump enough power into it without it overloading? Blah, blah, blah. So we're gonna treat, like, the paper, the project treats QML as a survey, not an implementation, because I didn't do any experimentation. It was more of a, here's what happened in the past, here's what's going on now, here's what we kind of see going on in the future, sort of thing, like a 10, 15-year outlook. So, early quantum machine learning research focused heavily on theoretical speedups. But the field has shifted towards practical feasibility. So two dominant approaches today are quantum kernel methods and the variational quantum circuits, so VQCs. Now that focus is on the algorithmic and model side, so we're thinking trainability, benchmarking, and then on the hardware side too, so how do we fit these things onto the actual hardware, so hardware constraints, right? So a little diagram there, somewhat illustrating. So on this slide, I want to reiterate that my project was not an implementation. It's a structured survey. I analyzed quantum machine learning across these domains, and in each domain, I evaluated using 3 lenses, right? So opportunities, challenges, limitations. Where we see kind of a glean to, okay, this could work, or it is working. Challenges would be setbacks, but they could be fixed. And then limitations are, they're pretty strict negatives. So this is a consistent tone across the entire project, right? All right. Now getting into the actual 5 pillars. So the biggest opportunity for quantum machine learning is representational power. Quantum systems can represent data in exponentially large spaces. But challenges also include encoding classical data into quantum states. And the biggest limitation is that most theory assumes ideal hardware. So, in a lab-based environment, we wouldn't have the resources to, back something like that up. So, yeah. in the real representative world, we don't have ideal hardware. Theoretical, we have zero noise, zero wind resistance, zero heat, zero fall off, all these other things. So they just take the hardware basically out of the equation in most of these things, and they treat it as a non sequitur. And yeah, so whenever we put things into practice and practicality, we have to then start dealing with those parameters, and all of a sudden we're hit with the hard knocks of life whenever we're it's been an interesting couple of years, for sure. definitely the hardware thing. And right now we actually don't have ideal hardware, so we don't have realized perfect hardware, if that makes sense. So, well, perfect hardware won't ever exist in any form or facet because we're constantly making better and better hardware and better environments for our software, firmware, electrical loads, throughputs, things like that. We're constantly making better environments for those, but it's never going to be a perfect one and done sort of thing. So yeah, we're just never going to have that. We can always have better the next day, better 10 years from now, but yeah. And that flows into the next one. So the reality is of the hardware of the NISQ era. And NISQ is the noisy intermediate scale quantum. So that's what I say. That's what I mean by NISQ. We're currently in the NISQ era. So that means everything's really noisy as kind of general and ELI5 as that is. So that just means that qubits have short coherence times and very, very noisy operations. Yeah. And these constraints, they limit circuit depth and model complexity. So we restrict connectivity and shallow circuit depth. So hardware, again, it's the biggest bottleneck for actual growth. Algorithmic challenges. So quantum machine learning relies heavily on hybrid quantum classical models from back then to right now, and kind of like on the edge sort of thing. A major issue is something we've got we're calling as Barron's plateaus. So it's where gradients vanish and training basically stops working. So also optimization is unstable due to the noise and sampling at these areas. So right here, training and optimization completely unstable, and everywhere around this right here, you're going to get completely your accuracy, your all of your performance metrics and things like that. You're going to see, you're basically entering a plateau right here. So whenever you are in one of these systems and you're training on one of these models using QML, so the more complex the models are, it's not always better. So simpler is better sometimes, but also not always. I don't know. It's weird when quantum comes into play. Quantum always makes things more difficult than it has to be, but yeah. Empirical validation. The big question here: does quantum machine learning actually outperform machine learning? Early results, we're talking 5, 10, 15 years ago, they look pretty promising. But more recent studies, as we've gotten into more and more results back, and I'm not talking about 10, 20. I'm talking about millions of runs. more results in recent studies back show that the gains kind of disappear. So we're linear with the classical computer, and with the quantum computer we're logarithmic, and we kind of plateau. So we need to change something, basically is what it's saying. This is under, and again, this is under realistic hardware, not theoretical hardware. With theoretical hardware, we'd be exponential in the positive direction, going up. So that's, like I said, theoretical, but on a realistic lens, the quantum advantage is not. It's still not proven. Okay. Security and cryptography, one of my zones. So quantum computing has a major application for security and cryptography for a lot of venues, like financial, like Bitcoin, banks, things like that. It could eventually break classical encryption methods. In fact, it already has in several instances. And quantum machine learning could also help with things like anomaly detection as well, like intrusions and things like that for networks, things like that. So put it on a host router, something like that, that sort of thing. But today's systems, their end nodes, things like that, they're not powerful enough to pose real threats. So unless you have another quantum computer attacking, a zone, a network zone, then you're not going to need some quantum computer that's defending it, sort of thing. These things are sort of in place in other areas, so yeah. But long term, we're thinking like let's say 15 years. The risk is pretty high for security wise for quantum. So like AES-256 is going to get cracked. Yeah. Improvements. Quantum advantage, it's not a guarantee, because everything online that I read before I started reading all these papers was very highly theoretical. And even a lot of the papers that I read that weren't dealing with theory or the hardware were highly theoretical, or were highly in the blue sky, we call it, zone, where it's just I put my algorithm in model, blah 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 blah, and then it just spits out what I need over here, and then here's my time in between. They don't have anything in between A or B, no hardware, blah blah blah, right? So they didn't have those gap fillers. They need to really combine this theory paper and then this hardware paper and then all these empirical papers and things like that, and then have a culmination study, wrap all those things into one, and then have a discussion on that, and then you may see some modicum of cohesion or truth come out of that. So anyway, so right now we have noise limit performance, small scale experiments, And kind of what I said a little bit ago, in the midterm, about 5-10 years, we're going to have better qubits in connectivity and improved trainability, improved training stability, and we may even reduce our barren plateaus. In the long term, I'm thinking 10 and even possibly 20 years minimum. The fault-tolerant quantum systems will start to show up, and then our potential true quantum advantage will start to show up. Not even be realized, but we'll start to be like, oh, we may, we should be investing in it now, but as in the commercial and private and academic, but yeah. Oh yeah, and I wanted to go back and say that quantum machine learning, it's not a universal improvement, it's conditional. So improvement is not guaranteed. The gains depend on alignment between our hardware capabilities, our algorithm designs, and our problem structure, just like artificial intelligence. So it's heavily hinged on just how we treat literally any other thing. Okay. I've kind of got to wrap this up pretty quick because I'm at 26 minutes. So quantum machine learning has some strong theoretical advantages, but practical limitations dominate right now, heavily. The gap between theory and practical is a central issue. They're really disjointed right now. The progress depends on improvements across multiple areas. So in the paper, I have this table. This is a summarization of that table, but so this table summarizes, I don't want to demean my paper, but it basically summarizes the paper. So each domain has an opportunity, a challenge, and then a limitation. And the pattern is consistent across all domains. So we have a strong theory and a weak practical implementation across everything. And then this reinforces the conclusion that quantum machine learning is promising, but it's not mature. All right. So that is it. That is my presentation. I appreciate you taking the time.